A pale light crept over the horizon as dawn approached the northern ridge. Most of the settlement remained asleep, but Eric had been awake for hours. His thoughts refused to rest, circling the same questions again and again. Why had the old man given him the emblem? Why was the council searching for artifacts? And why did the emblem feel colder each time he touched it? He sat on the edge of the small bed, staring at the wrapped object on the table. The room was quiet, except for the soft crackle of a dying candle. Outside, he could hear the faint murmur of early morning guards changing shifts. Eric stood and moved toward the window. The street below was empty, except for a lone merchant setting up stall. A few soldiers patrolled the central square, their expressions serious, their steps tense. Something had unsettled this place long before Eric arrived. He turned back to the emblem. The cloth around it had loosened slightly in the night. He reached out and pulled it open. The dark stone seemed almost alive under the morning light, the carved lines shimmering faintly, as if reacting to the dawn. Eric whispered, "What are you?" For a heartbeat, he thought he saw the lines shift. But the candle flickered and the illusion vanished. Before he could examine it again, a sudden knock startled him. 3 short taps. Then silence. Eric froze. Travelers rarely received visitors at this hour, and no one should know he was here. He tucked the emblem back into his bag and stepped toward the door cautiously. "Who is it?" he asked, and a calm voice replied, "Someone who believes you arrived with something important." Eric felt every muscle in his body tighten. The voice was steady, controlled, but carried a hint of urgency. He considered staying silent, but the person outside spoke again. "I'm not here to harm you. But if you open this door, I may save you from far greater trouble than you expect." Eric glanced toward the table where his pack rested. Something told him this moment was not a coincidence. He placed his hand on the door latch, but hesitated. Whoever stood outside knew more than they should. The question was whether they brought danger or answers. With a slow breath, Eric unlocked the door, and the moment it opened, the course of his fate shifted again. The door opened just enough to reveal a hooded figure standing in the dim hallway. A woman, younger than Eric expected, with sharp eyes that scanned the room behind him before settling on his face. She spoke softly, but with purpose. "Close the door." Quickly. For a moment, Eric hesitated, but something in her expression, focused, urgent, told him she was not here by chance. He closed the door behind her as she pulled back her hood. Dark hair fell over her shoulders, and a small scar crossed her eyebrow, faint but old. She carried herself like someone trained to survive without being seen. "My name is Lyra," she said, "and you're in danger." Eric crossed his arms, studying her. "You appear in my room at dawn and expect me to trust you." "I expect you to listen," she replied. "The council sent officers out last night. They're searching for a traveler, someone who carries an artifact they lost control of." Eric felt his pulse rise, but he kept his voice steady. "And you believe that traveler is me?" Lyra stepped closer, lowering her voice. "I know it is. The emblem you carry is no ordinary stone. It holds power older than the ridge itself." Eric stiffened. She shouldn't have known about it. He kept it hidden the entire time. "How?" he asked quietly. Lyra glanced toward the window, checking the empty street outside. "Because I saw the man who gave it to you." Eric's eyes widened. "The old stranger in the mist. You saw him?" he asked. She nodded. "He isn't just a wanderer. He's been watching the council for weeks, following their expeditions, studying their discoveries. And when he found out what they planned to do with the artifact, he chose not to return it." Eric took a step back, absorbing her words. "What does the council want with it?" "Lyra ehalit slowly." "Power. Control. Secrets buried in the mountains. The council believes the emblem is the key to something hidden deep beneath the ridge." She paused, letting her words sink in. "And they believe whoever holds it becomes a threat." Eric's hand instinctively moved toward his pack. The emblem felt heavier than ever. Lyra continued, "If they discover you have it, they will not question you. They will seize you, and it will not end well." Eric looked at her carefully. "Then why warn me?" A brief shadow crossed her expression. "Because I owe someone a promise," she said quietly. "And helping you is part of keeping that promise." Before Eric could ask more, another sound echoed from the hallway downstairs: boots. several of them. Moving with purpose, Lyra's head snapped toward the door. "They're here," she whispered. "And they're not here for breakfast." Eric reached for his pack. Lyra grabbed his wrist. "Not through the door. They'll search this entire floor." She pointed to the window. "Your escape starts now." Eric moved toward the window without argument, sensing the urgency in Lyra's voice. Below, the street was still quiet, the pale morning light washing over empty stalls and shuttered doors. It was a long drop, but survivable. Behind them, the footsteps grew louder. Firm, organized, getting closer. Lyra pulled aside the curtains and unlatched the window. "We have seconds, not minutes. Once they knock, it will already be too late." Eric slung his pack over his shoulder. "Is there a safe route?" "Not safe," she said. "Only possible." Before he could ask her what that meant, the sound of boots stopped directly outside the room. A sharp knock struck the door. "Open up." "Council inspection." Eric froze. Lyra grabbed his arm. "Go. Now." She slipped through the window first, dropping onto the narrow awning below with practiced ease. Eric followed, landing harder than he intended, but managing to keep his balance. Another knock at the door, this time louder. "Last warning." Lyra pointed to the side of the building. "Climb down the support beams. Stay quiet." Eric followed her lead, gripping the wooden beams as a burst of force shook the door upstairs. The council guards were breaking in, a voice shouted inside the room. "Search everything." Eric reached the ground as Lyra landed beside him. Neither spoke. They slipped into a narrow alley between two buildings just as a guard leaned out from the broken window above, scanning the street. The alley was dark and cramped, filled with crates and discarded ropes. Lyra led the way, moving with silent precision. Eric kept close, listening to the distant shouts as guards spread across the settlement. "They know someone escaped," Eric whispered. "They always know," Lyra replied. "Which is why we keep moving." They emerged behind a row of storage sheds near the edge of the settlement. Smoke rose gently from chimneys, and the early morning market had begun to stir. The world around them seemed normal, yet everything beneath it was shifting. Lyra stopped suddenly and placed a hand on Eric's chest. "Wait." Eric saw why. Two council guards walked across the square ahead, scanning every face. Their hands rested on their weapons, ready for confrontation. Lyra leaned close. "Keep your head down. Follow me. Do not speak." They stepped into the flow of townspeople heading toward the market. Eric kept his eyes forward, fighting the urge to look back. The guards watched the crowd with sharp, suspicious eyes. Just as they passed the guards, one of them turned slightly. For a moment, Eric thought their eyes met, but then a cart rolled between them, blocking the guard's view. Lyra used that moment to pull Eric down a side path, away from the square. Only when they were out of sight did she finally speak. "They won't stop," she said. "Not until they find you. Or the emblem." Eric tightened his grip on his pack. "Then we need to get out of the ridge," he said. Lyra nodded. "That's exactly what we're going to do." But her voice carried something else, something Eric noticed for the first time, a hint of fear. Lyra led Eric deeper into the narrow paths behind the market, moving with the confidence of someone who knew every corner of the settlement. The crowd grew thinner, and the noise of the main square faded behind them. Eric glanced over his shoulder, sensing the pressure of the chase even when no one was in sight. "How much farther?" he asked quietly. "Not far," Lyra replied. "But we must stay out of view. The council has patrols on every main road." They reached a small storage yard enclosed by wooden fences. Barrels and crates were stacked neatly, hiding most of the ground. At first glance, it looked unremarkable. Lyra knelt beside an old crate, brushing aside the straw scattered around it. Underneath, the wooden boards were carved with faint lines. Eric frowned. "A marking. A lock," Lyra corrected. She pressed her palm against the carved pattern and pushed. The boards clicked softly, shifting just enough to reveal a narrow seam. With a careful pull, she lifted the wooden panel, revealing a dark opening beneath the ground. Eric stepped back. "A tunnel. A forgotten one," she said. "Older than the council. They sealed most passages when they took control of the ridge, but they missed this." How do you know it still leads out? Because I've used it before. Eric stared at her, realizing there was more to Lyra than she admitted. She motioned toward the opening. Go. The council will sweep this area soon. Eric took a breath and climbed down the short wooden ladder. The air below was cold, carrying the scent of damp stone. A narrow tunnel stretched into darkness, supported by beams that groaned softly with age. Lyra dropped down behind him, pulling the wooden panel closed above them. For a moment, they were swallowed in complete darkness. Then she struck a small spark stone, producing a faint, white flame. The tunnel walls glimmered faintly, carved smooth long ago. Eric studied the markings on the stone. This place wasn't built by the settlers. No, Lyra said. It existed long before the ridge was founded. Few people know that. She stepped ahead, guiding the way. They say these tunnels once connected the entire mountain range. Hidden paths for travelers, scouts, even scholars. But now, there are secrets the council wants erased. Eric followed her deeper into the tunnel. The air grew colder. The walls narrowed. Why erase them? He asked. Because secrets make the council uneasy, and anything they cannot control, they fear. Eric felt the emblem inside his pack, a reminder that he was carrying something they feared most of all. That a distant echo rumbled through the tunnel, faint but real. Eric stopped. Did you hear that? Yes, Lyra said. Voices. They're searching above us. They both stood silent, listening as footsteps crossed the ground above. The sound faded slowly, replaced by the distant drip of water. Lyra exhaled. We're still ahead of them, but not by much. Eric nodded. Then let's keep moving. With the sparkstone's faint glow guiding them, they pressed deeper into the ancient passageway, unaware of what waited on the other side. The tunnel grew narrower as Eric and Lyra moved deeper underground. The soft glow of the sparkstone flickered across the stone walls, revealing ancient carvings etched into the surface. Some were faded beyond recognition, while others formed symbols Eric had never seen before. He slowed his pace to study one of them. These markings, they look similar to the lines on the emblem. Lyra nodded without turning. I noticed. That is why the council is desperate. They believe these tunnels hide something connected to the artifacts. Eric touched the cold stone gently. Then the emblem came from here? Maybe. Or was made by someone who knew these tunnels existed long before any kingdom did. Eric stepped away from the wall, the unknown weight of the emblem pressing on his mind. He followed Lyra again, their footsteps echoing softly through the passage. A sudden gust of cold air brushed Eric's face. He frowned. Did you feel that? Lyra stopped. Airflow. That means an opening ahead. But it also meant something else. An opening that could be used by others. They continued, and soon the tunnel widened into a small chamber where the ceiling rose higher than the rest of the passage. In the center lay a collapsed archway, stones scattered across the floor. Through the broken gap, a faint light shimmered. Lyra lifted her sparkstone higher. This used to be a gate. One of the old protective seals must have failed. Eric crouched beside the fallen stones. What was it protecting? Lyra hesitated. According to the oldest stories, passageways that lead deeper than the council ever dared explore. Before Eric could respond, a faint rumble echoed through the chamber. He stood slowly. What was that? Lyra listened closely, her expression tightening. Movement, not from above, from inside the tunnel network. Eric's grip on his pack tightened. Are there others down here? Sometimes travelers, sometimes creatures that adapted to the dark. Either way, we should not stay here. She stepped toward the fallen archway, slipping through the narrow gap. Eric followed, careful not to disturb the unstable stones on the other side. The air was colder and carried a faint metallic scent. The new passage sloped downward slightly, the floor marked with old tracks, some human, some not. Lyra raised the sparkstone again. Her voice lowered. We're close to the outer exit, but there is something you must understand before we reach it. Eric stopped. What is it? She turned to face him fully for the first time, deep in the tunnels. Once we leave the ridge, everything changes. You won't be running from just guards anymore. The council will send trackers, scouts, maybe entire patrols. They will not stop. Eric looked at the stone wall surrounding them and the darkness ahead. I did not choose this, he said quietly. But I will not run forever. Lyra studied him for a moment, then nodded. Good, because where we're going, you will need to stand your ground. She motioned forward. Come. The exit is not far. As they resumed walking, the distant echo returned, louder this time. Something else was moving in the tunnels, and it was getting closer. The echo came again, closer, heavier, like something dragging across stone. Eric stopped mid-step. The cold air in the tunnel thickened, and the faint light from Lyra's sparkstone seemed to shrink. What is that? He whispered. Lyra did not answer immediately. She slowly lowered the sparkstone toward the ground, listening with absolute stillness. Her eyes narrowed. It's not human. Eric felt a chill crawl up his spine. Then we should move faster. No, Lyra said. Moving too fast will draw it toward us. It follows vibrations. We have to stay steady. The echo grew louder. Eric swallowed. And what if it catches up? Lyra looked down the tunnel ahead. Then we hope the exit is closer than it sounds. She motioned him forward, and they continued walking, controlled, quiet, each step measured. The sparkstone's pale light revealed more carved markings on the walls, many of them broken or scratched away. Eric whispered, Has this creature been down here for long? For generations, Lyra replied. Most tunnels collapsed over time, but some chambers remain open. And whatever survives in the dark learns to adapt. Another scrape echoed behind them, longer this time. Eric tensed. It's gaining. Lyra quickened, had pace fully. The exit should be around the next bend. They reached the bend, and Eric exhaled in relief. Faint daylight shone ahead through a slanted crack in the rock. A collapsed partition had created a narrow opening to the outside world. There, Lyra said. Once we get through, it can't follow us up the incline. Eric started toward the light, but froze as a low growl rolled through the tunnel behind them. This time, it was unmistakable that a living sound, slow, deliberate, and too close for comfort. Lyra grabbed his arm. Don't look back. That's what it wants. Eric forced himself to face the slanted opening again. The tunnel behind them darkened as something large shifted through the shadows. They reached the narrow gap. The air outside was cold but fresh, carrying the scent of pine trees. Lyra slipped through first. Come on. Eric moved to follow, but the growl came again, louder, echoing off the tunnel walls. Then he heard it, a scraping surge of movement. The creature charged. Eric lunged through the opening as the sound of claws tore across the stone floor. He felt the air shift behind him, as if something massive had swung forward. Lyra grabbed his wrist and pulled him through the final stretch. The two of them tumbled into the open air as a heavy thud struck the rock wall behind them. Dust rained down from the edge of the crack. Eric rolled onto the ground outside, chest heaving. Inside the tunnel, only silence remained. The creature did not emerge. Lyra stood first, brushing dirt from her cloak. It can't fit through the gap. We're safe. Eric looked back at the slanted opening, seeing only darkness inside. Yet the tunnel felt alive, as if the unseen thing was waiting for its next chance. That he stood slowly. What was that? Lyra answered with a calm he did not expect. One of the reasons these tunnels were abandoned. She turned toward the forest ahead. And the reason we must never go back through them. A strange silence settled over the training hall as the final hour of practice came to an end. Mira wiped the sweat from her forehead, noticing how quiet Eris had suddenly become. His usual confidence muted. His eyes stayed glued to the floor, as if something heavy was sitting on his mind. Eris? Mira asked softly. You look different. What happened? Eris forced a smile, the kind that convinces no one. I'm fine, he whispered. Just tired. But Mira knew tiredness didn't make someone's voice tremble. Professor Velrin dismissed the class, but before anyone could leave, Kale stepped forward. The temperature of the room seemed to shift. His presence always had that effect, unsettling yet fascinating. Mira, Kale said, his voice calm but firm. Stay. I need to talk to you. Eris turned sharply, clenching his fists. Why? You already trained with her. Isn't that enough? Kale's eyes narrowed, but he didn't rise to Eris's provocation. This is important. Mira hesitated. The tension between the two boys was thick, almost electric. Eris gave Mira a pleading look, but Kale had already stepped closer, lowering his voice. "There's something you should know," he said. "Your power. It's waking up faster than expected." Mira froze. "Faster? That didn't sound good." Kale's tone deepened. "And if we don't handle it correctly, someone else will notice, someone who shouldn't." Eris moved protectively in front of Mira. "Stay away from her. She doesn't need your warnings." Kale finally met Eris's eyes, cold, emotionless, almost dangerous. "This isn't about what she needs," he said quietly. "It's about what's coming." Myra's heart raced. What was coming? And why did she suddenly feel like her life wasn't just changing, but slipping into something much darker? Myra's breath caught in her chest as Kale's words echoed in her mind. "It's about what's coming." Eris stepped closer to her, his voice tense. "Mira, you don't have to listen to him. He always talks in riddles." But Mira wasn't so sure anymore. Something in Kale's eyes, cold yet strangely protective, told her this wasn't a game. Kale folded his arms. "Her energy signature has already reached the threshold. If she doesn't stabilize it soon, others will sense it. And not all of them are friendly." Eris scoffed. "You love scaring people, don't you?" Kale ignored him and turned to Mira again. "When you used your power today, did you feel a pull? Like something inside you was trying to break free?" Myra's stomach tightened, because yes, she had felt that. During training, there was a moment when her vision blurred, when the world around her disappeared, when something inside her surged forward like a storm waiting to erupt. She nodded slowly. Kale's expression hardened. "Then you need to learn control, and fast." Eris grabbed Myra's hand protectively. "Don't listen to him. He wants something from you. He always does." Kale's jaw tightened. "Believe what you want, Eris. But Mira deserves the truth." The distance between the two boys felt like a spark ready to ignite into a fire. Before anything could erupt, Professor Velron's voice echoed down the hall. "All trainees, return to your rooms. Night lockdown begins in 10 minutes." Kale stepped back, but his gaze remained fixed on Mira. "This isn't over," he said quietly. "Meet me tomorrow." "Alone?" Eris immediately shook his head. "No way. You're not meeting him." But as Mira looked into Kale's cold, knowing eyes, and then into Eris's warm, protective ones, she realized something. Her journey had truly begun, and whichever path she chose would change everything. Night settled over the academy like a heavy curtain, the sky dim and silent above the towering spires. Mira sat on the edge of her bed, unable to calm her thoughts. The encounter with Kale kept replaying in her mind, mixing with Eris's warnings until she could no longer tell which voice to trust. A soft knock broke the silence. Mira stood quickly. When she opened the door, she found Lisa waiting in the hallway, arms folded, eyes sharp with curiosity. "I saw you talking to Kale earlier," Lisa said quietly. "Are you all right?" "He usually keeps to himself." Mira hesitated but nodded. "I'm fine. Just confused." Lisa stepped inside, letting the door slide shut behind her. "Kale isn't easy to understand. He doesn't talk to people unless he has a reason." Mira looked down at her hands. "He said I need to control my power, that something dangerous is coming." Lisa's expression shifted. For a moment, Mira thought she saw worry flicker across her face. "Did he mention what kind of danger?" Lisa asked. "No, only that others might sense my energy." Lisa sat beside her. "There are groups outside the academy who would want someone with abilities like yours. The academy protects us from them. But if Kale believes your energy is growing faster than normal, then he might be right to worry." Mira felt a cold weight settle in her chest. "So you think I should listen to him?" Lisa considered the question carefully. "I think you should be careful. And I think you should learn everything you can, whether it's from Kale, Eris, or the instructors." The room fell quiet. Then Lisa added, almost whispering, "Just don't let them pull you in different directions. Choose your path one step at a time." Before Mira could respond, the academy lights dimmed, signaling the start of night lockdown. Lisa stood and moved toward the door. "Get some rest. Tomorrow will be intense." After she left, Mira sat alone again, Staring out at the faint glow of the defensive shield that surrounded the academy, two boys with secrets, a power inside her she didn't understand, and a warning she couldn't ignore. Tomorrow would decide more than she realized. Morning arrived quietly, the academy still wrapped in a soft silver light as the sun rose behind distant mountains. Mira woke earlier than usual, her mind restless from everything she had learned the night before. She dressed quickly and stepped into the corridor, hoping the cool morning air would calm her thoughts. But the moment she entered the main training hall, she sensed it. Something felt different. Instructors moved with unusual urgency, whispering to one another. Students gathered in small groups, speaking in low, tense voices. The atmosphere buzzed with an energy Mira had never felt before. Uncertain, alert, almost waiting. Eris spotted her from across the hall and hurried over. "You felt it too, didn't you?" he asked. Mira nodded. "What's happening?" "No one knows, but the instructors are on edge. They're saying someone approached the academy borders last night." Myra's breath caught. "Someone?" From outside, Eris lowered his voice. "They didn't cross the shields, but they got close. Too close." Before Mira could respond, the hall door slid open. Professor Velrin entered with several senior instructors behind him. The room fell silent. "We will begin the day with a controlled exercise," Velrin announced. "Remain with your groups. Follow all instructions. No one is allowed near the outer grounds until further notice." The tension in his voice made Myra's heart tighten. As the instructors began dividing the trainees, Mira noticed Kale standing at the far side of the room. He wasn't with anyone. He rarely was. But today he seemed even more distant, his eyes fixed on her, as though confirming something he already suspected. He gave the smallest nod. Not a greeting, but a warning. Eris stepped protectively closer. "Ignore him. Stay with me today." But Mira wasn't sure she could ignore him anymore. Not after everything she had sensed and everything Kale had told her. The training session began, yet her mind kept drifting back to the shadow that lingered near the academy borders. Someone had been watching, waiting, and deep inside her, the same strange pull she felt yesterday stirred again. Quiet, powerful, and unmistakably alive. As the morning sun climbed higher, Mira realized one thing with absolute certainty. Her life at the academy would never be the same again.